All right. I know it's been a while. Pretty sure my last recording was in like September, but this has got to happen. This is frankly overdue at this point. So, I have a friend. I don't know how much more like introduction needs to be done. I've talked to him about the movie K-pop Demon Hunters because I saw the movie and I liked it. I liked that movie and I liked the music a lot. So I was talking to him about it, and he said he didn't like it, which kind of like baffled me. Not because K-pop Demon Hunters is like a fucking masterpiece or anything, but because it's a very like crowd pleaser movie, you know. And I'm really trying not to be like reductive when I say that, because in basically every sense it's a well constructed movie. It's good, and it's not good in like some esoteric way. I don't feel like it's like catering specifically to my tastes or anything like that. I feel like it's just a very, very well made movie. And so I was surprised to hear that he didn't like it. And what he said is that he didn't like it because he just doesn't like how everything has to have a happy ending, which I found a little strange because, most stories have a happy ending, which I think makes sense because I mean, this could get into a whole fucking conversation about the purpose of art, right? But like, I think what we can all agree on, well, I think most of us would agree on, is that art tends to follow a fairly similar, like, structure of, like, catharsis. Most stories follow the, hero's journey type deal, even if, the specific points don't completely match up with the plot points in the story. Basically, in almost all stories, there is going to be like a tragic event that is then reconciled in some way. That kind of really broad definition of catharsis. And a happy ending is the easiest way to do that because, oh, look, they overcame their struggles. Wow, that's cool to see. That's cathartic. But he doesn't seem to like seeing that all the time, which I kind of get. And so I recommended him Echo because not every ending in that game has a happy ending or is a happy ending. But, obviously I came away with a stance of like, that's a little bit weird. I don't quite understand that. But I think I'm starting to. Dear listeners, if you've been following this channel, if you've listened to other episodes, you may have heard me talk about I Think I Like You, the webcomic. That's right, I talked about it just like in the middle of my first episode on Echo and Arches. I just kind of went off about it because that's just the kind of thing that I do. But anyway, my big thing during that was that like, sorry, I'm trying to think back. Yeah. Okay, my big thing there was that I Think I Like You has this problem, as I called it then, of seeming to like kind of not be able to decide between taking things kind of seriously and hand waving away conflict or very easily resolving things. You might be able to see where this is going, especially if you're reading the comic. Yeah, it's had this habit of not taking things too seriously, even though it kind of seems like sometimes the writers want to. You know, the writers put in this message within the text of the story about what they think pride should be. But then at the end of the comic, they say, hey, this is just a silly comic. Don't take anything we're saying here seriously. Yeah, it's just a silly, we're just having fun here, guys. Don't worry about it. And then they want to do lore and world building for Leon, but also they don't want to do too much of it before they get back to Sky and Leon being little queers or whatever. That might sound a little insulting. If it is, I'm sorry. If it helps, I'm also, you know, one of those. I'm not helping my case. If you're gay, that's a-okay. I'm gonna fucking move on. What are the other examples? Well, the big example I had was that they started this conflict with Zeb and Jax. I think it's Jax. Because I'm pretty sure in that episode, I call the fox guy by the wrong name the entire episode. Granted, I'm just a letter off. All these characters have 3-letter names, except the ones from the underworld, which I think is a neat little detail. I think it is Jax, not Dax, as I call him. Yeah. Jax is sounding better, so I'm gonna say Jax and pray to God that I'm right and didn't fucking forget again. Anyway, Jax and Zeb had this whole thing. Zeb had a crush on Jax. Jax is like, no, I'm not gay, dude, which was tragic for me personally. But, it makes sense. And I felt like Zeb got over those feelings pretty naturally. But then Zeb gets himself a girlfriend thanks to Jax, and Jax gets jealous because he has these feelings that kind of came up for him, but now he's got a girlfriend. So what are you supposed to do? What am I supposed to do about these feelings of jealousy? I cannot easily resolve this conflict because either I, try to get in there, get between those two, and that would get real fucking messy. Or, I don't. And I have to figure out how to deal with these feelings because they aren't just going away, Jealousy is often a pretty difficult emotion to handle or reckon with. At least it's been my experience. The solution that didn't occur to me at the time is that maybe they could become a throuple. I don't think the writers really bring that up as an option either, but it doesn't appear to be an option for the characters, and that makes sense. Most people tend to be monogamous, so that makes sense. And I was invested in this story because, again, I struggle with jealousy personally. And so seeing it portrayed with a character that I like and seeing that the story is seemingly kind of trying to take this seriously and maturely, I was like, oh, damn, okay. Well, I'm interested to see how they resolve this because, I'm invested in this conflict and I don't know, maybe the solution that the writers give, the solution that Jax finds will be relevant to my life. And the solution is, at the time, seemingly, that Jax just kind of gets over it. He decides, okay, I'm going to be mature and stop avoiding Jax. I'm just going to talk to him and his girlfriend, and he does that. And he seems to be kind of okay when we last see him. And then we kind of move on from that conflict because Sky and Leon go to the underworld, and I just got to be 100% real with you. I don't think I could give any less of a fuck about anything that happens down there. We got our Cerberus character. He's fine. I'm sure plenty of readers were humming woogieing over him, which, I get. He's not my type, but I get it. I personally prefer Rick Griffin's depiction of Cerberus. That's just me. Anyway, yeah, I just don't really care about any of the things that happened there. But the Leshy character was cool. I like him. Anyway, so they get back to the surface, and almost immediately, it's like we see this interaction between Jax and Zeb, and it's a little bit awkward. And I'm back in. I'm sitting up again, like, oh, okay, shit. We're back to the interesting stuff. My show is on again. Finally got through that like 20 chapter ad break. My show's back on. Because now we get to see the thing. Because what I said in the last episode was that conflict seems to be resolved. Zeb appears to be over Jax. Jax appears to be over his jealousy. That looked to be the case, and it continues kind of looking to be the case. But, you know, fairness to the writers. That can be the case, but then there can still be some lingering jealousy because these are feelings that were had, and it's not like you can forget that that's a thing that happened. Although I don't know if Jax ever, like, admitted to Zeb that he had these feelings of jealousy. I think the mutual thing between them is like they both know that Zeb had a crush on him. And so, you know, that'll color their interactions a little bit, even if things are starting to kind of go back to normal. How do I know this? Don't worry about it. Anyway, right, what happens is I don't think anything particular happens with Jax. Maybe I'm misremembering. But what I do remember is that fucking Zeb... No, fuck. I'm getting them mixed up. Jax is the fox, Zeb is the possum. They're both hot. Fucking Jax takes his shirt off for a video. Zeb passes out. And, you know, fucking Jax is like, okay, so are we not over this? They're like, no. I'm like mostly over this. It just happens every once in a while. It's like, okay. And again, I'm back in because I think this is interesting. Because again, it's a thing that happens. You know, can get over a person, in quotes. But then pretty often there'll be like a little resurgence or something will happen and you'll feel that way again. You'll be like, oh, well, fuck, god damn it. Because obviously if you're trying to get over someone, you don't want those feelings, you know. So feeling them again is a little bit inconvenient. So once again, I'm thinking, all right, writers, we're back. How are we going to resolve this one? Because once again, there is not an easy solution here. If there are lingering feelings, perhaps there's something at the root of it. Perhaps there's some like underlying issue that Zeb has, or there's like something in these two's relationship that needs to be like addressed or tackled. Because again, there's no easy solution to this thing. The solutions involve like, I don't know, does Zeb like admit, no, Dex, I have feelings for you and I'm breaking up with my poor girlfriend to be with you? Or is Zeb just going to have to like learn to live with this while also being in a relationship with the woman? Like, you know, again, it's pretty open-ended, and I was interested to see how the writers would handle it. Now, perhaps I was a little bit of a fool. Perhaps I was getting my expectations a little bit like, I don't know. I don't want to say mixed up. Perhaps my expectations were misplaced. Because, you know, I even say in the previous episode that I Think I Like You is not a particularly like serious comic. It doesn't ask to be taken super seriously. When it does do these conflicts, it, you know, kind of conflicts with that tone a little. But what I think needed to realize was that the way you resolve conflicts far better informs the tone of your story than like the nature of the conflict. You know, like this conflict that exists in the story of Jax realizing that he's jealous of Zeb, but knowing that, like, you know, he can't do much about it because Zeb has a girlfriend and also he's turned him down. And so that leads to some complicated feelings and maybe even a bit of self-loathing. That's a fairly mature, like, inner conflict to have. And it's pretty real. But I guess I should have gathered something about the tone that the writers were going for with this story when that conflict was rather neatly wrapped up. I guess I should have gathered something when it began to become a pattern that no sacrifices had to be made, no like big leaps or changes had to happen in order for any of the conflicts in this comic to be resolved, because that is going to inform the tone of the story and conflicts going forward much more than just the topics that are being dealt with. Now, the most recent page of I Think I Like You is very interesting. Again, I was on board. I was upright in my seat, eyes locked onto the screen, especially when I see that this is a page with Zeb and his girlfriend. Ooh. And Zeb needs to talk to her about something. Ooh. So, what happens is that Zeb is like, oh, yeah, so I didn't tell you this because I didn't want things to be awkward between us, but I totally had like a giga mega crush on Jax to the point that, you know, I needed a fucking life alert button because I'd pass out when I saw him, which is understandable. So what she says is like, oh, I mean, that makes sense, dude. Like, I kind of figured. Like, well, how'd you know? She's like, dude, okay, when like, Jax came to me, he was talking to you for like 20 minutes. And when we first started texting, he talked about him for like an hour. Basically, what she's laying down is that she actually knew this whole time that there was kind of something going on between Jax and Zeb. This is the first time we're learning that, you know, there was any kind of feeling beyond this guy is cool from Jax before Zeb got his girlfriend. Because if you just read chronologically, I mean, you know, Jax says, yeah, no, sorry, I'm not gay, Zeb. So you get from that, okay, he must not be interested. It's only after he gets the girlfriend and tells fucking Zeb, Jax, Jesus, about it, that, you know, some feelings start to show. But apparently there was kind of something there that whole time. And I guess he was just in like denial about being gay, and the jealousy was like the final thing that clicked into place to make him realize like, oh God, I do have feelings for him, which is fine, I suppose. Denial is a powerful thing. Do I think there's evidence of it in the story prior? Perhaps I'd have to go back and reread. So she knows about this. And she says, but, you know, I decided to stick with you, Zeb, because I was curious about where this would go, because you two were kind of like disaster gays. And I guess she was just invested in seeing like what would happen between the two of them. She's like a stand-in for the reader. She wants to know what kind of fucking tea occurs, or like she wants in on the drama. But apparently she started developing feelings for Zeb, which I would kind of hope, seeing as they were dating. And like in summation, I guess she's like, yeah, I guess I just kind of hope that you would get over your feelings for him, but it seems like these feelings aren't really going away. And to be honest, like, I think you two should do something about it. I was mainly here to, you know, get in the drama. I got caught up in all this, and isn't it weird how feelings can be so confusing? Anyway, I think we're over now. So go have fun with your fox boyfriend. Okay, so I want to preface this by saying that this is not coming from a place of like fucking literary critique or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that this is like a problem with the story and that they should be doing something different or that they're doing something wrong or any of that. Maybe they are, but as much as I hate to say this, they did it like about as well as I think anybody fucking could. Like, there was an objective here, clearly, that the writers wanted to get to. The objective that they wanted to get to is Zeb and Jax getting together. But where they were at was fucking Zeb had this girlfriend. Okay. How do we resolve that? They do it in a way that basically results in like no contradictions. Like, you could say, you'd have to kind of stretch a little to say that no, Jax actually had feelings for Zeb the whole time is a contradiction. Because again, denial is a powerful thing, and maybe he just didn't see it, and that's the most you're gonna get. Because we don't actually learn that much about Zeb's girlfriend, because this is a gay furry webcomic, and good luck getting fleshed out female characters in those. And so we have nothing to suggest that, no, she wasn't actually like just in it for the drama or whatever. Like, you got the impression that she liked Zeb, of course, but nothing she says contradicts that. Basically what happened was we got like, what would you call it? We got a retcon, but nothing was like technically changed in the canon as we knew it. So it's not really a retcon. Essentially, we just got details of the past filled in that allowed the writers to very neatly and conveniently get to the objective of putting Zeb and Jax together. So from a writing standpoint, as far as I'm concerned, they did everything pretty okay. From a personal standpoint, I am a little bit annoyed, which might be my problem, because again, I probably should have seen this coming at this point. Oh, this story sure does have a pattern of very like neatly and tidily wrapping up all these conflicts. I wonder what's going to happen with this new one. So, I don't know. Fool me, what is this, 4 times now? Shame on me. But except they aren't fooling me. Like, this is just the story that they want to tell, and I guess, I was expecting something out of it that wasn't there. And you can talk about how there has been a little bit of teasing as to like legit conflict with, setting up what appear to be, these very difficult to navigate or conclude conflicts. But again, you wrap them up the way you do often enough, and I feel like it kind of sets an expectation that I just wasn't, I guess, picking up on. At least I didn't fast enough. So when we got to this newest page, I was kind of blindsided by how quickly this conflict was resolved. I was like, oh, what? Oh, fuck, is that it? Instead of going, oh, yep. I don't know. Again, like, I guess I'm just reiterating the thing of this is like a personal thing. The writers aren't doing anything wrong. It's just I didn't clue in. I wasn't familiar with their game, and so now I'm left like kind of annoyed that this conflict I was invested in just kind of dealt with, and the writers are probably just going to wash their hands of the whole thing now, and we'll see if Zeb's girlfriend is even a character in the comic going forward. But if she is, I'm sure like things are going to be like hunky-dory between her, Jax, and Zeb. And if they aren't, if something comes up and perhaps the girlfriend starts getting like jealous of those two and starts getting a little unhappy that her relationship didn't work out, which would be completely fair, I'm sure that conflict will be resolved in a very similar way. You know what? Maybe that conflict is resolved by her getting with Leon's sister or something. That'd be kind of neat. Seemingly everybody in this story is gay, which like that one I'm not too surprised by. that's something that I understand. I wasn't blindsided by that. I'm not under the delusion that this comic is going to follow like the real world fucking statistics, because they don't need to. And you know what? Controversial opinion. Maybe they shouldn't. Whoa, okay. I don't feel like that should be a super hot take if you know me. I mean, I'm a writer, at least I try to be. The majority of the characters I write are queer, just because I don't know. You write what you know. I'm queer. I know queer people, and so that's what I write. It's the same with these writers. They appear to be queer, and so the world is populated with a bunch of gay characters. And I've talked about this phenomenon where you tend to, find people who are like you, and so queer people tend to find other queer people. And so if you just look at this group of friends, if one of them is like gay or trans or bisexual, anything like that, chances are the rest of the people you see around them are also going to be. So there you go. Writers in the audience, if some like dipshit comes to you saying, like, oh, there's an unrealistic number of gay people in your story, first of all, it's actually just not worth engaging with them at all. So you can probably just disregard the following advice. But if you really want a rebuttal, then there you go. Like, if your story is following a gay character, chances are most of their friends are also going to be gay. And if they're not, then it makes perfect sense too. And also, again, like, stories don't have to adhere to real world logic. Anyway, this is all kind of irrelevant. I mean, this was all to say that, like, would it be cool if we had a little lesbian couple in this comic? I mean, yeah, I think it'd be kind of cool. Because if we're interested in remaining consistent, then yeah, everybody in this story should be gay / bisexual. There's a couple mystery characters here. I don't think we know Red's sexuality. I don't think we know, what is his name? The golden retriever guy, who I love dearly. I don't think we know his sexuality. We just know that he's very okay with like hugging his friends. Which doesn't necessarily make him gay. So, you know. But yeah. So why does this annoy me? Aside from the fact that, my expectations were subverted. Well, it's kind of like the whole jealousy conflict, right? I think. Like, I don't know. Why is this? Why am I feeling this way? I guess I started up this recording to try to figure this out. Like, live. Because if I had an answer, it's not at the forefront of my brain right now. So you might just have to listen to me try to figure this out on the fly. Lucky you. Um okay. Okay. So I am annoyed at this story for very, very like kind of neatly resolving this conflict of like, you know, oh, I have this crush on this guy, but I also have this girlfriend and I love her. I mean, it's always going to be personal, right? It's like, okay, my personal preferences. Okay, I mean, I think this is a big thing. Is like earlier I said that this story doesn't necessitate sacrifices being made or some price being paid or some like big hurdle being overcome in order to resolve these conflicts. I, personal preference, really am very, very interested in stories that do necessitate a sacrifice being made or just something being lost as a result of this conflict. Like, I think what really informed this for me, a big part of it, certainly. I mean, a big part of what informed this for me was just like life and seeing that that's how life works. What often happens is these big conflicts in your life are never going to be resolved very neatly. And you might lose something really important to you, or you might have to make some kind of really big sacrifice or compromise. And you just got to learn to live with that. But the first season of Arcane is like, I think what really nailed that into me for, in terms of like storytelling. Because the first season of Arcane has this conflict kind of at the core of it between Jinx and Vi. The conflict between those two is that, Vi did something. Well, okay, so, I mean, what makes it interesting, part of what makes that conflict interesting is that Jinx, when she was still Powder, did something like really fucked up and destructive, and it like almost kind of destroyed Vi's life. But she was a kid. She didn't listen to Vi. Granted, she definitely should not have done what she did. But also, through learning about her character, you understand why she did the things that she did. She shouldn't have done it, but you can understand why she did. That being said, it is also not completely unreasonable for Vi to react the way that she did. But once again, maybe she shouldn't have. But that's just it, right? When we're talking about these really like impactful or devastating things, just people aren't going to act rationally. What happens is they act on their like most base instinct or and emotions. And you spend the first like 3 episodes of Arcane learning what Powder and Vi's base instincts are. And so when this big thing happens and basically their whole family is killed, you see those come out in their most extreme form. And in Vi's case, that is lashing out. you know? And so, the conflict that rests between them is that uh, though you may not be able to blame her completely, Powder did kill Vi's whole family, basically. And Vi fucking smacked Powder, confirmed basically like her deepest insecurities to her face, and like shouted at her. Powder's role model, arguably the person that she was like emotionally dependent on, almost certainly emotionally dependent on given their circumstances, like tore her down in a moment and then disappeared for 7 years. So, you know, things aren't great for them, but they are sisters. Vi still loves Powder, and she wants to save her / protect her. Powder, who is now Jinx, obviously has extremely mixed feelings about Vi, but like she wants to have her in her life again. And of course, she still has that kind of like emotional dependency on her. And also, she's probably just looking for someone in her life who isn't Silco. It's not super hard to improve on that, So what you kind of understand through just like knowing how stories operate is like, okay, well, and also it's not just how stories operate. Like you kind of understand Vi's stated goal is to find Jinx and reconcile with her. And it isn't hard to tell that Jinx also wants to, have Vi back in her life. So we have an objective, which is Jinx and Vi coming back together. But we have this thing stopping them, which is all the fucked up baggage that they have. Sounding a little familiar. We're making connections. So the question then is, all right, how do we, I guess, reconcile these conflicts and these differences in order to get to the objective? And I mean, there's infinite ways to do it. And I think in most stories, the writers would find a way. And maybe it'd be like really well written and impressive. Maybe it'd be fucking like quick and sloppy. I can tell you that the route that the I Think I Like You writers tend to take would not fit in a story like Arcane. I'll get back to that in a second. That isn't to say that the writers of I Think I Like You are like doing something wrong. Again, they're just different stories tonally. And so they just don't fit together. But if like let's just say that like in a hypothetical second season of Arcane, this like really deep, heavy conflict between the sisters was resolved in like one episode through some like kind of ridiculous contrived circumstance, that would be kind of like bad and really disappointing. Like if that were to happen, it'd kind of suck. But that doesn't happen, fortunately. What happens in the first and only season of Arcane is we don't get to the destination. Yeah? Because, again, going back to how we expect stories to work, we expect to have that catharsis of like, they have overcome their struggles. They have overcome this conflict to come back together and get that happy ending that we see so often in stories. Like, I don't know, fucking K-pop Demon Hunters or I Think I Like You. What a strange array of media we have here. But it doesn't. Like, one of the big things I love about the first and only season of Arcane is that it acknowledges the really kind of brutal and unfortunate reality that sometimes these conflicts just can't be resolved. Sometimes things are just like too much. Sometimes two people become too different, and instead of trying to come to a compromise to like understand each other or involve yourself in their life again, you have to come to terms with not having them in your life anymore. And I realize that that's not quite like a perfect example of what I was talking about in the like, make a great sacrifice to reach your objective category. But I guess what I'm trying to highlight is that like the conflict is not like neatly and tidily resolved. It's not really, I mean, it is kind of resolved, but not in the way that we want. Because, another one of the big conflicts with Jinx in particular is she has this struggle between two different identities. There's Jinx, which is this kind of new self embodied by her more chaotic and violent tendencies. And, just this acknowledgement kind of that she is a different person now who is damaged by trauma and the horrible circumstances that she had to live in. But then there's Powder, which is the innocence that still kind of lies in her, and that very much like rests in and is represented by Vi. And so at the end, we do get a resolution of that conflict because Jinx chooses one identity over the other. That is a resolution of that inner conflict of which one will I be. She chooses Jinx. And in that way, she is essentially saying, all right, Vi, we can't be together the way we were. You want Powder, but Powder no longer exists because I am making this choice. I am choosing to be Jinx. I mean, the way she would say it is that she just is Jinx and she doesn't have a choice in the matter, which is kind of fair, but And so I guess you could say, like, if we wanted to resolve that conflict between the sisters, well, now it's going to have to look way different. The neat and tidy resolution is like Jinx stops her violent ways and she stops having these hallucinations. Oh, look at that. She's Powder again. We can all live happily ever after. But the story recognizes that that's not really like realistic, especially with like, the way the story is written and the tone of the story. Again, that kind of ending, I don't think would fit in Arcane. So, yeah, like, if we are to get to that objective, we'd have to do something completely different. Something would have to, like, change drastically. Like, either Vi would have to drastically change her, like, I guess you could say view of Jinx. She'd have to really work to try to come to terms with the fact that Jinx is a completely different person now. That would take a lot of work. Or different route, different resolution of the conflict, which is to just not solve it altogether. Which is very, very difficult because, again, they do care about each other. Vi loves the fuck out of Powder/Jinx. But, like, what you might come to kind of think or understand with the ending of the first season and only season is that the sacrifice she might have to make in order to, reach the objective that's best for her is to let go of her sister. And I think that's really, really interesting. because it's just like it's more nuanced. I think it's more. I feel it feels more real to me. It's more relatable to me. And I don't know. I just find those kinds of like conflicts just like really interesting and meaningful. Again, this is largely personal preference. Of course, when you're talking stories, a piece of advice you will often hear is that the heroes should have to make some kind of sacrifice in order to win the day or whatever. But, art is subjective. I Think I Like You isn't like a bad story for doing what it did. I just really would have liked to see them do something different. That's all. And I got annoyed enough about it to just drop everything. I didn't have to drop much of anything, actually. And just record a video after like 3 months of being absent. Yeah, hi guys. I can't say I'm back. It's winter. So that's why I haven't been recording. I'm just doing this in my apartment because you know me, sometimes I just got to get these things out. And I finally reached a boiling point. It was like, all right, I got to talk about the gay webcomic. Oh my fucking God. And then I could talk about this other comic, Duncan and Eddie, which the arc isn't resolved, but I'll just say I'm very, very interested. Because Duncan and Eddie is another like really sweet, wholesome slice of life comic. Very, very light tone with like a couple short exceptions. But then suddenly they're doing this really like nuanced fucking conflict. Okay, fuck, I might have to talk about this fucking comic, but like I gotta take care of something quick. So I'll be back probably. Fucking hell. This is not the time to do this. I have somewhere to be tonight. But here we are. So real quick, Zeb's girlfriend is named Emma with one M. I feel a little bad not remembering her name, especially after I made that little jab about gay furry comics not having fleshed out female characters. So there you go. Her name is Emma. Anyway, so this Duncan and Eddie comic, right? I like it. It's neat. And again, generally just like a slice of life. It's very cute. That's kind of it. Like, there were moments of seriousness. Like, Eddie comes out to his parents and they kick him out. So far, there's no like arc of earning his parents' acceptance. That's just the status quo now. And it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of real. It's not something they dwell on for like a super long time. They have like a couple chapters for it. And then later in a page that I really like, his uncle finds out that basically there's this running bit where like Eddie's uncle finds out that he's gay and he's like the cringe kind of supportive. He gets him a sweater that says ho ho homosexual and he's like, hey, there's my gay nephew, stuff like that. But then this uncle finds out that Eddie's parents kicked him out and he's fucking furious and he like calls his parents and chews them out. And it's like, see, he is a good ally, even if he just like shows it in slightly dated ways. Good stuff. I like it. So anyway, there's these two characters in the comic. I guess you could call them like the other main characters, Kip and Mason. And like the first page that Kip is introduced, it's established that they have a big fat crush on Mason. No, unfortunately, I'm forgetting pronouns. I know Mason, I'm almost positive Mason is gender fluid. I know that Kip is trans, having difficulty remembering if they're trans masc or trans femme. I don't think it'd be out of the ordinary to go check. Okay, so the answer is neither. Kip goes by they, them. Okay, so Kip and Mason. Kip has a big crush on Mason, and it is a bit of a will they won't they thing. But then Mason overhears a little confession that he wasn't supposed to hear from Kip. And also, like, to be like super clear about this stuff, because I don't know, I like to be. I looked at the, I guess you could call it reference sheet. Kip is they, them, and Mason just goes by any pronouns. And to the writer's credit, they use basically any pronouns for Mason. I definitely remember seeing she and they, so that's cool. But anyway, so Mason overhears Kip saying that they want to kiss her, and she's like, oh, holy shit, what the fuck? Because she was completely oblivious somehow. It is like a little bit of a joke between mostly Eddie, actually. Like, Eddie teases Kip about it. But anyway, so, Mason hears this, and Mason and Kip, they're really good friends. And I really like Mason. Mason's a really, really good character because she's like really like kind of she's got Garnet energy in that they like they don't emote a lot, but it's very evident that they care, and they're like just like always present. They're always just like there for Kip. And especially in this arc, you see that she really cares about Kip because she hears that fucking Kip has this like crush on them. So she's like, okay, well, I think it would make her happy if I like, I guess, return the favor, so to speak. What happens is that Mason doesn't know how romance works, and so she like does some research. I believe there's a panel of her getting a bunch of fucking books from the library. So evidently they decide, okay, I don't know how romance works. I'm going to look at some books. And so what they gather is like, okay, so romance means flirting with someone. So I'm going to do that. So she flirts with Kip, and obviously Kip is like extremely flustered and like kind of overjoyed. Like, obviously they're into it because they really, really like Mason. What Mason sees is that this makes Kip really happy. And Mason is told that they are really happy. And so she goes, okay, I guess I'm going to keep doing this. And so they do. They keep flirting with Kip, and they start getting like really close. And I mean, the inevitable happens. Like, I believe what happens is Kip talks to Duncan about it, and they're like, I mean, like, Mason's doing this and this and this, but I don't know if that means that they like me. And Duncan's like, what the fuck do you mean? They're obviously flirting with you. Like, you gotta tell her, homie. Meanwhile, Mason is realizing that despite doing all this for Kip, despite doing what the books said, she does not feel the same way for Kip. And so immediately it's like, oh shit. And again, I'm up in my seat. I'm sitting up in my chair. Because, dear reader, what do you know? I've been in this situation before. Whoa, crazy. I don't know how much there is to say. I've been in like circumstances where a person really liked me and I just could not return the feelings. It kind of fucking sucked. So seeing this same situation happening with them, it's like, oh, interesting. Because I know from experience that these conflicts do not have easy resolutions generally. And so this latest arc is called Puppy Love. So far, there's 5 pages out for it. And every single one, man, I've never been more invested in this comic. And basically through this entire like arc, I've been looking at I think I like you, like, why can't you be like him? And again, personal preference, right? I would personally prefer if I think I like you did something like Duncan and Eddie, because what Duncan and Eddie is doing is like really, really interesting and really captures my heart. Because there's like layers to this too. So obviously the big thing here, especially when the two are like walking together in Puppy Love, is that Mace knows that she's got to tell Kip, hey, by the way, I just don't feel the same way about you. Meanwhile, Kip is thinking like, okay, I gotta say something to her. I gotta confess before I like leave for a month. And like, there's this really good moment where Kip grabs Mason's arm. She like tugs away, perhaps on instinct, perhaps because she's thinking like, oh fuck, we can't do that because like I don't want to keep leading them on. But then Kip is like clearly kind of devastated by that, which, you know, to some extent is understandable and kind of normal because like it's a pretty strong reaction. And after like God knows how long of Mason being like really flirty and kind of like close and affectionate with them, that sudden like contradiction would be kind of like jarring and almost frightening, which is not helped by the fact that Kip clearly has really bad self-esteem issues. And let me tell you, any conflict that one can have is made so much worse and so much more complicated by self-esteem issues. Because, like, well, you see what happens when this conflict comes up and a person with self-esteem issues is involved. My earbud case just fell. Don't worry about it. Because what happens is that, you know, they get to the bus stop, that's their destination, and Mason's like, ah ha ha, okay, gotta go, bye, because like obviously Mason knows what has to be. I just kicked my coffee table. Jesus Christ, what a mess. Mason knows what has to happen. She knows that they have to confess to Kip. Like that's the right thing to do. But also seeing Kip's reaction to them just like tugging away from them, it's like, oh God, I can't just drop this on them. That it fucking break their heart. And so Mason tries to get off just by like, she plans on just reeling back the affection and the flirting and just kind of hoping that the whole thing drops away. And again, I can tell you firsthand that doesn't work. Doesn't work that way. But then, before Mason can leave, Kip confesses, and it's really well done. The expressions on the characters just fucking sell it. Oh, they sell it. Because you know you could see the relief on Kip's face because they've had this secret for who knows how long, but they're finally confessing, and it feels good to get it off their chest. And it feels really good because they're thinking, like, God, Mason shares this feeling with me. So maybe we can finally have this thing that I wanted. And then you see the panel where they finally look up at Mason, who's like horrified because, like, oh God, okay, I can't get away from it now. It's too late. Like, I can't put this off. This is happening now. And the clear like horror and shock on Mason's face, Kip sees it, and so immediately they're clocking like, oh, something's wrong. At this point, I'm like recounting. I'm just recounting what happens. I recommend you read the comic. I've spoiled the shit out of it already, but you know, and just the exchange, the conversation that they have is, oh, like again, it's all so like real, because poor fucking Kip starts by saying like, "Oh God, no, this was a mistake. I should never have like assumed that you were flirting with me. That's just I was being stupid." And then fucking Mason's like, "No, I was flirting with you. I was flirting with you because it was making you happy, and I just kind of got carried away." And again, we're talking about like the dichotomy between easy and difficult solutions to problems, and how one might be more realistic than the other. And like, obviously the easy thing to do is for Mason to say like, no, I just got carried away, and you know, I just thought it'd make you happy. The easy thing to do is to look at it from the perspective of the audience and even the writer, really, and say like, that's understandable. Mason didn't necessarily know that they were never going to return Kip's feelings. Like, you know, Mason isn't the bad guy here. Mason isn't necessarily, I mean, some better communication could do both of them some good. And Mason was kind of leading Kip on. But you also understand through just the context of the story that, you know, Mason didn't do this maliciously, you know? Um, and again, it's easy to see that from the perspective of a reader or writer. And you might even expect Kip to be understanding. And especially because Kip likes Mason so much, you'd expect them to be like, okay, you know, I understand, but that's not what happens. Kip is angry with Mason. They're like shocked and angry at her, which again, it's like, fuck, this sucks. It all sucks, because Kip is saying like, how could you lead me on like that? Like, I felt this way about you for so long. You start finally returning these feelings, and then you fucking tell me that none of it was real. Like, that's fucking rough. And you can't blame, like, again, it's one of those things where it's not really the right, in quotes, reaction, but you cannot blame them at all for having this reaction, because yeah, from their perspective, and even just from a top down perspective, what Mason did is a little bit fucked up. And it's just kind of like, it's both like almost relieving and incredibly painful to see a character react that way to like, I don't know, like, that's another thing that I'm a little bit of a sucker for, is perhaps misplaced but righteous fury. The the other example I'm thinking of is in Two Kinds. Um, so this could go into a whole other thing. So I don't know, read Two Kinds. Um, and if you have read Two Kinds, it's the page where Scythe gets fucking pissed at Trace, and he's basically like fucking yelling at him, saying like, "You fucking did this to Marin. Like this is your fault." And he's not completely correct, but you understand where his anger is coming from. And personally, I don't know. It's just like, I guess maybe it's a bit of personal connection there, because I don't know if you knew this, but anger is a very human emotion. It's something we all experience. And I experience plenty of anger myself, and I experience anger at people for perceived wrongs that is perhaps misguided, is often misguided if I'm being real. But anyway, it's also just really rough because, again, these characters really, really like each other, and what's really going on is just a misunderstanding. But you can't blame Kip for being fucking angry. But then, again, it's really real. Kip immediately, almost immediately, then turns that inward. They go from like, how could you fucking do this, to, oh, fuck, well, this is my fault, isn't it? Because that is how people with low self esteem think. Like, yeah, someone like Kip with the like self esteem that they have, they would absolutely act that way. They would absolutely think that way. Because if you're in a very, very low place mentally, everything does kind of end up being your fault in your mind. And so once again, we have this like really fucking tough conflict where Mason gets perhaps kind of reasonably chewed out, but then Kip is suddenly saying like, "Oh fuck, no, it's my fault, isn't it?" And obviously Mason wants to say like, "No, no, it isn't," but she's still kind of in shock, and she's confused. She doesn't know what to do. Both of them seem to be like at a loss. They don't know how to handle this situation or these feelings, which is also very, very real. Like, I that's something you don't see depicted in a lot of media, is a character just being overwhelmed with emotions and not fucking knowing what to do with it, either because of just the complicated nature of the situation or because it's just all too much, you know. And I think they do that really well in this comic. Like, Mason can't breathe, and Kip is saying like, I can't. I have to go, because they don't know what the fuck to do about this. All they know is that this is causing them like a lot of pain and confusion, and they just want to be away from it. Just really, really good drama coming from the cute slice of life comic. And I'm thinking like, hey, I think I like you. You could do that. You could be him. They're different comics with different tones and different objectives. That is okay. That is perfectly fine. I think I like you. You can stay the way they are. You are. Uh, but it's looking like I might end up preferring one of you over the other, especially if um, Duncan and Eddie like resolves this conflict in an interesting way. Like, I'm extremely curious to see how this is resolved, because from my perspective, it's one of those things that doesn't have a very easy resolution, right? Like, I think it would be very reasonable for them to come back together and say their sorries and be kind of okay with each other. But ultimately, like, there's always going to be a, like, you know, you can't mend a broken heart with some I'm sorries. That's kind of the gist of it. Like, Kip has to be fucking devastated that, you know, their crush does not return these feelings, and this like moment of happiness that they had, this period of like hope and joy, was kind of fake. And then Mason has to deal with the guilt of having kind of played into that or been a part of that. Both extremely difficult things to like deal with and get over. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of these episodes turn into, so that's this stuff about media. Now let me talk about how you know, I kind of relate to this because this and this and this. Like, I don't know, what do I've led people on, not intentionally, but I have. And yeah, so I know from experience that the guilt is not easy to deal with. I don't know how much more I need to say than that, though. I could get into the specific story, but again, I have somewhere to be tonight, so I probably shouldn't. And ultimately, I did just want to talk about the fucking furry webcomics. Like, this isn't some thinly veiled excuse for a fucking vent session like my last episode. Not the last one that you can see on my channel, but the last one I recorded. Um, I managed to record an episode so bad that I just fucking deleted it. And I didn't delete the episodes that ended up sounding like shit because of like some jingling in my pockets or some awful crunching noise. But my last recording was so fucking messy, and I was doing it in a very like emotionally raw place. So I was just saying things that I would not stand by anymore, and I just wasn't happy with it. I didn't want to put that out into the world, so I didn't. And I mean, these issues are things that I've kind of learned to deal with, or I'm at least learning to deal with now. So I don't think something like that would happen here. But also, again, I didn't record. I didn't record this to vent. I recorded it to yap about some comics that I like. So I think that's just what I'm going to leave it as. For the record, I still like I Think I Like You. I just need to manage my expectations about what it's trying to be, basically. And I also like Duncan and Eddie. God, I wish it got updated more. I'm not gonna rush it. I know not to rush art. Thank you, Toy Story 2. But you know, I wanna see what happens. I want my fucking show to come back on, god damn it. Anyway, um, I don't know when the fuck I'm gonna do another recording. Don't expect it anytime soon because it's goddamn cold outside. But then again, I might end up rambling about fucking Monarch of Monsters sooner than I expect. So look forward to that, I guess. Take care of yourself.